Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. So today, the purpose of this video is really, it's kind of twofold. We're kicking off another project. If you've been watching the 6.5 PRC stuff, you've heard me mention my same buddy that is letting me work up a load for that rifle. He also gave me a 6.5 Creedmoor at the same time and said, hey, I also need a load worked up for it as well. So close that up there. So that's really what we're kicking this video off with. It's more or less about how to resize your brass. So all of this stuff has been once fired. However, it was not once fired in the rifle that I'm going to be loading it for. Okay, so you can look at this as range pickup stuff, but this brass came from my cousin. He's got a Ruger Precision rifle, 6.5 Creedmoor, and he went out, he bought some factory ammo, shot through several rounds, and gave me the brass. And so that's what we're going to use on this project. I don't want to go out and buy new brass. This is going to work perfectly fine for the need that we have here. It's just working up a hunting load for my buddy to use on deer. So this brass, and you'll notice one missing there. I've got 44 pieces is what I was given, which is more than enough. But one missing there, and that's because I've already gone through the entire process with this guy just to verify and validate that everything I'm about to show you and kind of walk you through works in my situation. That's kind of the caveat that you really have to apply when you're watching these videos on YouTube, from all of the experts. I'm not one, but from all of the experts who grab a camera and upload content to YouTube, really, it should be just a reference, right? It should be a point of reference for you and your process and your application. You got to figure out what works best for you and the process that you like to follow. When it comes to brass prep for me, I'm just going to kind of walk you through the resizing process that I follow. So I go out, this stuff is loaded up, go to the range, shoot it, come back. Now I have to process the brass to load it again. So where do I start with that? Well, here's what we do. So I've got my brass. I like to use, I do have that custom 3D printed loading tray, loading block, whatever you want to call it, that Quest for the Perfect Load sent me, which is really great. I have it in 308, so I use that for my 308 loading stuff. But everything else, I really like these Lyman bleacher blocks, just because, on a standard, just sort of flat reloading block, grab one off my extremely clean reloading bench. So something like this, this is a Lyman job also, but if you're using this, and then for whatever reason, you don't know, who knows, right? You might flip it around, just if you're handling it and you're moving it and you're positioning it on your bench, and then all of a sudden you forget, like, yeah, it's got the Lyman logo on there, so hopefully you wouldn't, you'd be able to notice that. But if for some reason you didn't, then all of a sudden you lose track of, okay, which direction was I loading from, which charge weight, what, you know what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why, you can't mess this up, right? No matter if you turn it around or what, it really doesn't matter. They only face in one direction. So really good stuff there. That's why I like these the most. It just makes it a little bit easier to not get confused on what you're doing. So following or going through the process, I actually completed one step ahead of what I normally do. But typically what I'll do, I'll grab these, one at a time, run them through. This is just a Lee universal decapping die, so I'll run those through there. I actually went ahead and decapped 40 of them, and I saved these last 4, so we'll just do those. And this brass, it is not Starline brass. It does have a star on it, but it's not Starline. I think it's like Armscore or something. I have no idea. He couldn't remember the brand it was, but it is not Starline brass, but it seems to be, good enough. Seems to be pretty good stuff. So this is the process. Whenever I begin brass prep, I'll run all the rounds through a decapping die. And really, I got into doing this because of these guys right here. Let me show you why I actually started doing it this way. Was because of these guys. The small flash hole, I actually, on my resizing die, I took out the decapping pin for my 6.5 Creedmoor resizing die because of the undersized flash holes that I use on the brass that I shoot out of my rifle. It's got those undersized, see it, 59 thou flash holes. So your normal decapping pin isn't going to work in that situation. I already deprimed that one. But so that was why I really kind of transitioned to just a universal decapping die, and I actually did a video on this. I ground down, you're not going to be able to see that really well, but I actually took a Dremel tool, I believe it was, and I just ground down the decapping die, or the decapping pin, on this universal die to the point where it would fit in the flash holes. And so I just did that. It's much easier to do it on this one because it's a single piece. So I could actually mount the decapping rod, the entire thing. I could just mount it to my bench and then grind away at the pin portion with, you know, something like a Hornady or whatever. They have removable decapping pins, so it's a little bit more difficult to kind of grind those down. So that's really the main reason why I started this process. And I actually enjoy doing it this way versus depriming and resizing at the same time. I still do that for some cartridges. I don't always do it this way, but for like 6.5 Creedmoor, 308, 243, I'll typically follow this process so that I'm showing you now. But so after I get everything decapped, all right, so we're done there. Now I'll move on to the resizing portion, okay? And depending on what brand of die you buy, you know, obviously they're gonna come with some instructions, and you're gonna wanna utilize those to give you at least a good baseline or a good starting point, right? So this is just a Hornady custom grade die that I'm using, resizing die, full length resizing die. And down here, it tells you exactly how to set it up. So you raise the, let's move this guy over. So then you raise the ram to the top of the stroke. You screw the die all the way down until it touches your shell holder, and then you tighten down the lock ring and you're good to go. That is what the instructions tell you to do. So thread it into the press till it touches the shell holder, tighten the lock ring against the press, tighten set screw with Allen wrench. Okay, that's it. Those are your instructions. And I'm just gonna be honest with you, if I were to follow those instructions exactly to the letter, then I would not be able to size this brass enough. So right now, the way I have it set up, so you can hear that at the bottom, that handle kind of pop just a little bit. It's really slight pressure that I have. I have it screwed down a little bit tighter than just barely touching the shell holder, right? I wanted a little more contact on here to make sure I could get an appropriate size for my setup, which this is the same setting I use for my brass, my Lapua stuff, and it normally bumps it pushes the shoulder back about 1/1000, close to 2/1000. With this particular brass, what I'm finding is it's pushing the shoulder back 1/1000. So if I were to run the sizing die based on the instructions, I wouldn't be sizing the brass at all, because I had to tighten it down a little more, or had to go a little further than what the instructions say, just to be able to get that 1/1000th sizing operation, pushing that shoulder back 1/1000th. So just kind of, you know, just something to keep in the back of your mind whenever you're setting up your sizing die process. I use full length resizing dies for everything I do. I don't have any bushing dies or anything like that anymore. I used to have some, but then once you get into bushing dies, you really need to get into neck turning, which I had gone down that road in the past, and it just, for me and the shooting I do and the hunting situations that I put myself in to try to, you know, kill a deer, that's a lot of effort. This is a hobby for me, and going down the path of, you know, neck turning brass and worrying about bushing, you know, setup and all of that, it just kind of, it was one of those things where I ran into a point. It's like the law of diminishing return, right? Like, how much effort am I putting into my process, and then my end results, you know, I may see a slight improvement with all of that effort, but is it really worth, you know, the input? Because again, when we go hunt, which is primarily what I do with all of my reloads, I'm focused on hunting applications. You know, I've killed 2 deer so far this year, both with my 6.5 Creedmoor. One I did a video on, the buck, the 8-point that I killed, which is a pretty cool story. So if you want to see that, go back and find that video. It was posted, yeah, probably 3 or 4 videos ago. Go back, watch that. That was pretty cool. But the other one, so that was a 70-yard shot, about 75-yard shot. And the other one that I killed just here recently was a doe right before we left to go to Disney World. I took off work and went hunting with my dad and got set up in a pretty good spot and was able to kill a doe. It was, I think, 12:30 in the afternoon. Had 3 does come through. I was watching just kind of like a dirt road leading into a food plot. You know, I was sitting back off the food plot watching the road because there's planted pines everywhere on both sides, and so they're crossing. They got trails, you know, crossing that road back off of the food plot. So if you're sitting in the shooting house watching the food plot, you might not ever see the deer crossing behind you. There's no good angle to be able to watch that road coming in. So I was set up with my Millennium tree seat, which that thing is amazing, by the way. If you hunt on the ground, you need to invest in that and get you one. But so the 3 does come through. I shot the biggest one, and the shot was 20 yards. So that's the kind of, you know, those are the shot distances that I typically operate in, anywhere from 20 yards out to maybe 150 yards. So for me, you know, because I've kind of gone down the path of a lot of what you see on YouTube, where it's like, hey, let's dive off into, you know, bushing dies and neck turning and concentricity this and worrying about all these different things. And for me, I've kind of been there, done that. And it just, for the way that I reload and the application that I'm using my reloads in, for me, it seems a bit overkill, right? It seems a bit much. I can shoot good enough groups. That's really what you have to come down, you know, at the end of the day, when the dust settles, you have to meter your expectations, right? What are your expectations for your equipment, your application, all of that? And my expectations are, you know, sub MOA load, and go out and be able to kill a deer, you know, out to 200 yards if I need to, right? If the situation calls on it, which I haven't taken a shot on a deer further than 185 in all of my hunting life. So I've never taken a shot on a deer longer than 185 yards. And that was a doe, and I killed her with a 223. So, you know, it's just one of those situations where my type of hunting and shooting just lends itself to using a standard full-length sizing die, pushing the shoulder back a couple thousandths, so I'm not overworking the brass. That's really the main thing, is setting up the die, you know, as such, so I don't unnecessarily work my brass too much, right? I'm able to get good function in the rifle. Everything feeds fine, no problems. And yet I'm not oversizing it to the point where I could create a case head separation when the brass starts to stretch due to oversizing, right? Creating excessive head space when you're pushing this shoulder back 10, 11 thousandths and then blowing it forward and then you're artificially shortening your case life by doing that. So for me, this has really been the process that I've kind of settled in on. You know, just I've only been reloading for, I guess, a small window of time. It's only been since about 2015 that I started. So it's only been 6 years, you know, that I've kind of gotten into this, going on 7. And I've tried, you know, kind of some different methods and different ways of doing things when it comes to resizing brass. And this is just kind of what I keep coming back to and settling on that works best for me. And so this is really my resizing process. It's nothing magical. It's you know, there's no, it's funny listening to Johnny's reloading bench when he talks about all the different methods and the snake oil and all the, it's just comical, you know, all the black magic stuff where you do this and all of a sudden you're shooting 1/4 inch groups, or if you don't do that, then you're wrong or whatever. You know, at the end of the day, I get good enough results following the process that I follow, given the amount of time that I want to spend doing this, right? This is not something, yes, I post content on YouTube. That doesn't mean I do this full time. I got a full-time job. I got a family. Like I don't do this for a living. So this is just something I enjoy doing. It's a hobby. And I just like to bring you guys along to show you what I'm doing and show you what I kind of come across, results, or, you know, especially in the case of like the 6.5 PRC stuff that we're working on, there's no load data for that bullet, that 140 grain Spear Gold Dot and N565. There's no data anywhere for that particular load combination. So the stuff I'm doing, I feel like it's beneficial if you're in the same boat and you want to use that same bullet and powder combination. Well, then it could be useful, right? That data could be useful. And some of the stuff that I do on the channel, you may find it useful. So that's really the main reason. It is just, I enjoy doing it. So I want to bring you guys along, show you maybe things that I do, little things like that, like trimming up that decapping die, right? Trimming up that pin, you know, that's actually helped. I've had people reach out and say, hey, you know, I saw that video and I did the same thing and it worked great. And I appreciate that, you know, that type of stuff. So that's really the main reason why. But this is kind of the process that I follow. I like to use, really I'm down to just 2 different case lubes. I'll either use Hornady One Shot or Redding Imperial Sizing Die wax. What I found, this again might just be my experience, but this works really well in Redding dies. Okay, for some reason I have had some issues using Hornady One Shot in a Redding full length sizing die. Not exactly sure why. But I have stuck more cases using Hornady One Shot in Redding full length sizing dies than I have ever in my almost 7 years of reloading. I've stuck a few, probably 4 maybe cases with that combination of One Shot and Redding full length resizing dies. Not the small base dies, just your standard full length sizing dies. But when I use this, I have no issues. So for me, if I'm using Redding dies, I'm using this stuff. But if I'm using anything else, Lee, Hornady, you know, I have Lee and Hornady dies also, then I'm using this stuff. I really like this. So that's pretty much the process. That is the how to resize your brass. And you could even call it how to resize your brass for maximum case life, right? If you want to add in an additional tag there at the end. But that's pretty much it. I start off, I deprime everything. I come back, once I deprime it, then I'll spray it down with Hornady One Shot, let it sit for a minute or 2, and then I'll go through my resizing process and I explain to you how to set that up. Depends on the die, you know, that you have. Most of them are fairly similar. They're going to tell you raise the ram, top of the stroke, screw it down till it touches, and then, you know, adjust from there. Adjust accordingly, right? Whatever your needs are until you get it to function in your particular rifle consistently. That's the main thing. You just need good function in your rifle, and then that's a good sizing setup. So that's what I have this die locked in on, is that setting where it sizes the brass well for my Lapua cases. It sizes it well for, I've run Federal Gold Medal Match brass through this, same deal. And then now I've run whatever brand this is. It's not Starline, but whatever brand this is, I've run it through there with good results. So this setting is good, and that's what's good about tightening down these lock rings. So you have it, you know, kind of set up for the future. That's what I like about these Hornady dies and their lock ring, that cross bolt setup, really nice. So now I'm good to go for the next sizing. Yeah, I can just screw it back in and I'm right back to where I was. But that's where we're gonna leave it. The project, it's kind of a kickoff. I mentioned that early on in the video, but it's a Savage axis, very basic, bare bones. You know, Savage axis, 6.5 Creedmoor, and these are the first shots I took with it. That was my point of aim, the orange dot there. And these were the first shots I took with it. These were some leftover reloads, using a couple of different powders with some 140 grain gold dots, which that's the bullet we're going to use for this project as well. But the reason they kind of look not great is also this rifle has a ATN scope on it. So kind of the digital, you know, night vision setup. That's what the scope is. That's what he wants mounted on it, so he can record footage when he hunts and you know, takes the shot and all that. He wants to be able to record all that. So he put an ATN on top of it. This is the first time I've ever dealt with anything like this. So this is going to take some getting used to and trying to wrap my head around how to adjust it, how to get everything dialed in, and be able to hold tight enough to shoot good enough groups to where I think I'm getting good feedback. That was what I realized the other day when I was just putting the first rounds through the rifle, is that I've got the manual printed off. I need to go read through it and figure it out, because I wasn't able to hold tight enough, in my opinion, to be able to do the rifle justice. So I got to figure that out before we dive off into load development. But I wanted this to kind of be a basic once over. Hey, this is how you resize brass using a standard full length resizing die. This is my process that I follow that works really well for me. And then from here, you know, I'll just come right over to the Case Prep Express, and then I'll clean everything, primer pocket, chamfer, deburr. You know, I'll check them. I'll check the overall length, and if I need to trim, I'll trim. I doubt I do, but you never know. So, and the Hornady Headspace comparator set is really, that's your go-to. I mean, you have to, in my opinion now, that is an investment that you have to make. If you're wanting to extend your brass life and, you know, not overwork your brass, you can't tell otherwise. I mean, you really can't. You need to invest the money in a Headspace comparator set, and it works really well. Trust me, it'll make up, you know, it'll save you enough on brass where the cost of it is nothing, right? Comparatively speaking. So that's it. That's where we're going to leave it. Be on the lookout for some more videos about this 6.5 Creedmoor project. Should be a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting, again, with the scope setup, something I've never used, something I've never experienced. So we're just going to go from here. I'm going to be using, I'll be using the same Vihtavuori N565 powder for this project. Same bullet, Spear 140 grain gold dot. That's just such a great overall bullet, in my opinion, in that diameter, or gold dots period. Their rifle bullets are just, Spear's gold dot rifle bullets are amazing. So that's what we're going to stick with, and we'll go from there. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a good one.